Hello, the stream. Second stream of the day. Can you believe it?
Oh, very well. Enough games. You wish for more certainty? Then think upon what you know. Cyrus was a madman, quite useful to the family, yes, yet prone to baseless fears of being undermined. Then he was lying? The family Drayden had an agent at the height of power within the academy. The dean has the ear of the High King herself, and a place upon her council. Would your father leave such a resource upon the seat to die? His dark grin returned. You, mayhap, he would allow to pet.
Erica! Hey! How you doing? Yeah, hit me. What? What's happening?
Turn. You, mayhap, he would allow to perish, but not Cyrus. Very well, Evan muttered. I believe that.
A really good starting microphone for a good price is the Blue Yeti. That is what I currently use to record my audiobooks. It is a USB mic. It plugs into any computer, and it works with any recording software. You need a mic stand. You can get one that'll attach to your desk, but I have had bad experiences with those. I think that in order to get a good one that attaches to your desk, you probably have to spend quite a bit of money. So a mic stand, just an independent mic stand, might be a better option.
Eben muttered. I believe that, not for your words, but for the truth you speak of my father. Mako gave a mocking bow. You are too... mocking bow. You are too...
I do use Adobe Audition. I would recommend, though, that she gets Pro Tools. You can get Pro Tools for free. They have a free version and a paid version. The paid version is very expensive. The free version is very, very good. Probably everything you need for podcasting, and it is a better audio editing software. In fact, I'm going to be switching to it at some point in the future. Interviewing someone, how would you record their track on a separate track from your track?
It seems strange now. Look.
That's really difficult, Erica. The best solution, and the one that I always try, I don't interview other people on podcasts anymore because it's so hard. The best solution is to have the other person with their own microphone record on their own computer, and then you sync the audio files up afterwards. So when I guest appear on somebody else's podcast, I always do that. I'm like, hey, I have a really good microphone, a really good recording setup. I will record separately and send you an audio file. And the podcast host is always like, oh my God, thank you. That's going to make life so much easier. But that is not an available option for most people.
Mako gave a mocking bow. You are too gracious, little Lord Goldbag. Eben felt as though a great weight had lifted from his shoulders. If the Dradens had no hand in the attack, then he had played no part by delivering that parcel for his father. But with that worry removed, Eben's thoughts ran to a more pressing concern. I must ask you something else, said Eben. What do you know of the Academy's new dean? The replacement for Cyrus? The bodyguard's countenance darkened, his upper lip curling in a snarl. That meddlesome fool. You would do well to stay away from him. That choice may not be mine. He has seen me already, and from the moment our eyes met, I felt that he hated me. His malice was like a physical thing, reaching out to grip my throat. Mako snorted. How poetic. Yet if I were there, I might not doubt your words. Zane of the family Foradar has much cause to hate the family Drayton, and as it happens, your woes with this dean stem from his troubles with the former. Eben blinked. With Cyrus?
Miak, greetings! Welcome to stream. Good to see you.
What has he to do with this? Everything. You know the Dean spends much time within the High King's court. Upon a time, Zane was often in that court as well, along with another mind mage of our clan, a man named Driston, who you would never have met. Always Driston and Zane were at odds.
Good to see you, Miak. How you been?
Always Driston and Zane were at odds, for both were powerful wizards at odds.
Freelance editing. Hey, cool. Copy editing, line editing, dev editing, anything you can get your hands on. What's the plan?
were at odds, for both were powerful wizards of mirror branches, and Zane always gave counsel against Dristan's advice. They had been rivals even from their academy days, yet it was not until...
Okay. Word of advice, Miak, make sure you charge the right rate. Because if you don't charge enough, you're going to find yourself overstressed, overworked, and it's a bad situation. I used to edit for a long time, and I started out with like cut rates, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And then, of course, I was kind of locked into those rates with all my clients. So when I finally was like, okay, screw this, I'm going to start charging what I'm worth. All of my existing clients couldn't pay that, so I lost my entire client list and had to start over again, which I did, and I did well at that point, but
days. Yet it was not until they were both grown that their rivalry blossomed into violence, invited by Zane's own arrogance. There was a duel, a wizard's battle. Dristan received aid from Cyrus and another still more powerful wizard. When the duel was finished, someone lay badly hurt, but it was neither of the contestants. Zane's magic spun out of control, striking a bystander with no stake in the fight. The victim was a distant kin of the High King herself. The blood drained from Evan's face. That is no small crime. No, indeed. Constables and mystics pursued Zane from the seat and across all the 9 lands.
Also, one other addendum to that. If you work with clients who can only afford cheap editors, usually what happens is, and this was the case for the majority of people that I worked with, they write one book, they publish one book, it's not successful, they never write another one. And it makes sense. Why would they write another one? They spent, $1,000 to have their book edited and made no money. And if they want to do this as like a business, if they want to do it as a business, well, obviously it's not a profitable business. And if they want to do it just for the love of it, then they're very likely to go, well, I'll just edit it myself because I don't really care. Again, higher clientele will continue to write more books. And so if you do a good job, you get repeat business. Hardest part of my job was repeat business when I was working for insufficient rates.
But now, for reasons beyond understanding, the High King herself has pardoned him. Something to do with this war that now engulfs Underrealm, though I have not learned any details. And now that he is ensconced in power again...
Isn't that cool, though? I got into editing on accident, too. Same deal. A friend of mine needed his book edited, and he actually found somebody who had like an MFA in English. Yeah, an MFA, I think, or a BA. Anyway, they had a degree in English. And she edited his book. And then he asked if I would like beta read it, like, whatever. And I was reading it, and the edit was horrible. And I was a copy editor. And I was like, dude, this is a bad edit. This is very, very bad. Can I edit it for you for free? And he was like, oh, yeah, okay. And then I started turning in chapters, and he saw how much work had not been done. And he was like, dude, I have to pay you. And I was like, oh, well, okay. And then I just kind of went from there.
Ensconced in power again, he hates the family Drayden. He blames us for his own failures, his own weakness. Thus, if you have earned his ire, I warn you, hide. He is an eagle and you are a mouse. Do not provoke him. Do not even speak with him, if you can help it. I have no wish to spend any more time with him than I must, said Eben, shivering. But he was thinking of Zane and Cyrus and their duel. What might Zane think if he knew Eben had killed Cyrus in the end? But now Mako was looking at him keenly, and he forced himself into a steady calm. But this is an unreasoning cause for hate. I am not Cyrus. What happened to Zane had nothing to do with me. Mako shrugged. You are a Drayden, even if not by your choice. Every great family has some dark deeds to their name, and your best intentions do not pardon the actions of your kin. Eben sagged against the bookshelf, his head lolling back to strike the leather spines. Another dean whose hatred of him he could neither explain nor hope to alleviate. His life seemed a sad mockery, a jester's play. His hands clenched at his sides. Mako, for his part, seemed to be reveling in Eben's discomfort. He smiled again and then straightened. Well, I came only to deliver a letter. Now I must be on my way, unless you wish to reply to Albie. It would take me time. I will send it by regular courier. I am grateful for the letter, and for the truth about Zane. It was my pleasure, truly, said Mako with a flash of his teeth. But then his eyes drifted past Eben, and he grew somber. As for your other question, about...
I finished this chapter already. What the fuck is wrong with me? I was like, this sounds super familiar.
Chapter 5. Eben returned to Calum and Theron in their alcove against the wall. Calum appeared to have given up trying to read. He leaned back with his chin in his hand, listening to Theron as she went on about some new spell she was trying to master. They both looked up at his approach. "Thank the sky," said Calum. "It is my turn to go and look for a book." "What do you mean?" said Theron, frowning. "You cannot tell me the two of you do not enjoy my company. I have changed my entire class schedule for you." "Theron, I come here to read, not to speak," said Calum. She seemed about to reply, until she looked up and saw the concern in Eben's face. "Eben? What is it?" Eben glanced up at her, and then over his shoulder where he had been speaking with Mako. He shifted on his feet, the letter from Albie crinkling in his hand. My family is coming to the seat," he said, holding the parchment aloft. Both his friends grew solemn. "Well, that is a pleasant surprise," Calum said with visible effort. "Oh, do not be an idiot, Calum," said Theron. "When will they come?" "Sometime before year's end. But in fact, that is not what troubles me." He sank into a chair between them, his mind racing at how he might tell them without revealing Mako's involvement. "I have been thinking on what you said before, about Lilith being the thief who robbed the Academy vaults." "Yes," said Theron, sitting straighter. "Do you believe me now?" "Let us say that I did," said Eben. "What would we do about it? What do you know of Lilith?" Theron frowned. "What makes you think I know anything of her? She is a gold bag like any other. Well, besides the two of you, mayhap." Eben rolled his eyes. "I mean, how might she have done it? Where might she have hidden what she stole? Calum spoke before Theron could answer. I do not understand, Evan. Why have you changed your mind so suddenly? Just this morning, you agreed with me that there was little evidence pointing to Lilith. I have been considering the possibility, Evan said, hearing Mako in his mind. And I think it is unlikely that Dulmoon would risk open war against the High King, even with the alliance of these shades, whoever they are, unless they also had the support of one of the great families. A royal family for your strength of arms, or of a merchant family for the depth of our purses. But there are dozens of merchant families across Underrealm, said Calum. You have purses deep enough for a civil war, said Theron, leaning forwards in excitement. Only Drayden or Yeren could do it. And Yeren removed their children from the seat during the attack, while you and Cyrus stayed here. I think I see your mind, Eben. Calum shook his head. All of this is still only conjecture. And I ask you both again, even if you are right, what do you mean to do about it? To expose her, said Eben, leaning forwards. Think of it. If we can prove the Yerens had something to do with the attack. If we can prove... Think of it. Leaning forwards. Think of it. Leaning forwards. Think of it. If we can prove the Yerens had something to do with the attack and the theft within the vaults, they would face the High King's justice. Dulmoon would lose a powerful ally and be forced to surrender before this war has truly begun. Does your loyalty towards the High King not demand this of you? He thought he might have convinced Calum, for the boy paused with a frown. But when he finally answered, he was angrier still. No! This is a mad scheme. Where do you even get such thoughts, Eben? And do not tell me they came from that letter. I have been thinking on this, as I said, Eben muttered. I can see the lie in your eyes, Eben. I have seen it there before. Can you not even trust me with the truth? Now even Theron was looking at Eben askance, so he sighed and looked away uneasily. Very well. When I went to fetch a book just now, I was visited by Mako, my family's bodyguard, of whom I have spoken before. Here? Said Calum, his voice shrill. In the library? In the academy? How did he enter? I do not know. He seems to come and go as he wishes. He has been here before? Said Calum, nearly shouting. Now Eben was growing angry. Yes, and somewhat often. What of it? Mayhap Cyrus permitted it, and he has heard no different from Zane. Or mayhap he knows a way in and out of these walls that no one else is privy to. What matters is not how he came to tell me, but what he said. Theron seized Eben's knee, gripping it tight enough to make him wince. Did he tell you Lilith had something to do with the attack upon the seat? Eben looked away uncomfortably. Not exactly. It is rarely so plain with him. But he did say that if he were to investigate the attack and the theft in the vaults, he would begin his search with the family Yeren. She released his knee, but only to slap his leg. Eben grunted and rubbed at the spot. I knew it, Theron hissed, her voice shaking. She must have used her time in the vaults to scour the records for the artifact her family wanted. In exchange for helping Dulmoon in their assault, they would have access to any artifact they desired within the vaults. Her family must be putting her up to it. Understand that Mako did not say any of this, said Eben. It is only a theory, for now, and we must carefully consider our steps before taking them. Only a theory, you say, but I am certain of it. It was a Yeren plot set in motion months ago. Yet what would they earn from this? Eben asked. Do we believe they would risk the fall of an entire kingdom for a handful of magical trinkets? Some of those trinkets hold power beyond reckoning, said Theron. And what does Yeren care if the kingdom of Dulmoon should stand or fall? They are not royalty. Their business will go on, and their wealth will accumulate as it has for countless generations. Very well, said Eben. If we consider ourselves correct, and that Lilith was the thief, what now? How can we prove it and expose the Yerens? We could follow her. Eben and Theron went still, staring at Calum in amazement. He met their wondering looks with tight-pressed lips and eyes smoldering in anger. "I am surprised to hear that from you, Calum," Eben said carefully. "Are you?" said Calum. "If it is true, and if your family's spy says it might be, mayhap we should listen, then Lilith must pay. All the Yerins must. How many empty chairs are in the academy? How many lecterns require new instructors? And if the invasion was a tragedy, the coming war will be far, far worse. If blame for that may be laid at Yerin's feet, then let it be laid, and let them pay the price." Theron snorted, but Eben could see admiration in her eyes. "You sound like one of those kings you scorned earlier, eager for war." Calum shook his head. "I have no wish to fight," he said, more quietly now. "I only want truth. If we can get it, then let us do so, but in secret, and without recklessly endangering ourselves, for I will not help you. Then we can take what we have learned to the Academy's faculty, or mayhap to the constables. Let them deal with the criminals. If we can do that, well, then mayhap my parents will no longer wish to bring me home." They all fell silent. Then Eben rested a comforting hand on Calum's shoulder. "No doubt you are right. If we are all of us resolved, we should start immediately. We shall follow Lilith's steps outside of class, as close as her shadow. If Yerin should plot against the Academy again, we three will be the first to know." They spent the rest of their afternoon first to know. First to know. They spent the rest of their afternoon in studious silence. Theron even stopped trying to speak to Eben and Calum while they read. But when the day's final bell tolled, they stacked their books upon the table and made quickly for the halls. Eben tried to spot Lilith on their way out, but either she left as soon as the bell rang, or she was lost somewhere in the crowd. Only moments passed, however, before Theron summoned them with a sharp whistle. There was Lilith, heading towards the dormitories. Her lackeys, Oren and Nella, had joined her from their classes, and the three of them walked in step. Eben and Calum moved to close the gap between them, but Theron gripped their arms. "Not too close," she said, bringing her mouth to their ears to be heard above the crowd. "We do not want them to think we are following." Once Lilith reached the stairs, she led the others up. The older students' dormitories were nearest the bottom, so they left the staircase almost at once to enter the common room. While Lilith went into her dormitory, Oren and Nella remained behind to keep watch. "What do you suppose she is doing in there?" whispered Theron. "Nothing good, I feel," said Eben. "If she does not emerge in a moment or two, one of us should sneak." But then Lilith reappeared in the doorway, and the words died on his tongue. She had changed from her plain black student's cloak to a finer one trimmed in dark green brocade. He had never before seen her in specially tailored student's robes. Indeed, he would have thought it was against the rules. Lilith swept past Nella and Oren, who hastened to fall into step behind her. Eben and his friends followed all the way back to the library, where she swept in through the wide doors. "I have never thought that Lilith was the studious type," said Eben. "And if she is studying, why should she go to change her cloak? Do you wish to wait here and wonder? Only one thing will reveal the truth." And so saying, Theron pushed through the library doors. Eben and Calum traded a final worried look before running behind her. Inside, it was silent. Only a handful of students were in view, puttering about the shelves with candles or lanterns now that the sun was fading from the skylight above. "There!" Calum pointed, and Eben's gaze followed. He saw a number of students sitting near the library's rear, and Lilith was among them. "Let us get closer," said Theron. They stole off to the right so they could wend their way through the shelves towards the gathering without being seen. As they drew near, they slowed their pace until they were moving little faster than a crawl. At last, they stopped behind a thick shelf and leaned around the corner to watch. About a dozen students had gathered to meet with Lilith. They had arranged armchairs into a circle with some tables set about for refreshments, cheese and bread and many flagons of wine. They spoke lightly and laughed often, drinking freely. Eben noted that some already had ruddy cheeks and noses. He could catch snatches of conversation, of lessons learned and spells mastered, of which instructors were kind and which cruel. But Lilith was silent and cruel. But Lilith was silent and cold, positioned as if at the head of an invisible table, and her eyes were grave as they stared into nothing. What is she brooding on? Wondered Eben. More to the point, what is this gathering all about? Said Caleb. Why would they meet in the library if not to study? Not everyone enjoys books as much as you and Eben, Caleb, said Theron. Eben looked about the room with a frown. No, he is right. If they do not wish to study, they could meet in the city. There are inns and taverns aplenty, with better refreshments than they have here. So why the library? Theron's brow furrowed, but after a moment Caleb snapped his fingers. What else might they find in a tavern? Eben blinked. I know not what you mean. Noise? Distraction? Near enough to the point. Other people. Whatever they are discussing, they do not wish to be overheard. But that is silly, said Theron. There are other students here in the library. Sky above, we are here and can hear them. We came looking for them and can only hear their words because we are eavesdropping.
I don't know, Miak. I wouldn't worry about it too much. You are going to have to find your selling proposition, though, right? Like why people should hire you, especially at first, because you don't have like a extensive body of work. But once you nail that down, figure out a way to get yourself enough work that somebody will hire you based on what you've already done, right?
Who else would be here now, except students who enjoy learning more than an evening spent with friends? Bookish children, as you might call us, Theron. And look, none of those will draw within a stone's throw of this gathering of merchant children and nobles who bully them. Eben looked and saw that Caleb was right. Some students there were indeed, pulling tomes from the shelves to study by candlelight, but they all steered well clear of Lilith's party. If he had happened to be here for other, more innocent purposes, he would have done the same.
I would also ask your friend if they know any other authors. And you should do that as a constant practice whenever you work with a client. If they're happy with your work at the end, just say, hey, thanks so much. Hey, do you know anybody else who needs editing services? It's a numbers game, obviously, but your best source of work is going to be referrals.
He would have done the same. As if in answer to Caleb's words, Lilith stood abruptly from her chair. The other students went silent after a moment, looking up at her expectantly. We must invite more to this gathering, she said. The Gold Bag Society must grow. We will reach out to every merchant's child, every royal son and daughter. Hear, hear, said one of the students, raising her goblet with a prim smile. Though I'm nearly scandalized to hear you use that uncouth term, gold bag. Honestly, such a weak word if truly they mean it as an insult. Surely you do not mean everyone, Lilith, said Orin with a nasty grin. Not that Drayden whelp, at least. He gave a laugh and looked around. The other students tittered in approval, but Lilith fixed him with a steely gaze. Every merchant's child. Every royal son and daughter. Orin's face fell. Even Eben? Every merchant's child. The Gold Bag Society must grow. We must invite more students to this gathering. All right, Lilith, we have heard you, said Nella. She shook her head with a weak smile. Sit and drink. You are drawn tight as a Colentin bow. Lilith shuddered, shaking her head as she placed a hand to her brow. Yes, very well. Only, do not forget. She took her seat again and gratefully accepted the wine that Nella pressed to her before leaning back into her cushions. Eben turned to the others. Calem's face was scrunched up as he peered at the gathering, but Theron had gone stony, her hands balled into white-knuckled fists. Every child of merchants and royalty, is it? Said Theron. Such petty, small-minded revenge. How very like her. What do you mean? Said Eben. Theron tossed her head. Do you not see, Eben? She is forming this little gathering of children with wealth and power. Sky above, she is even willing to mend her bridges with you. And why? I do not know, said Eben, frowning. I myself have no wish for such a mending. Of course not. Yet she aims to beguile you, because one day you will rule over your family and its deep reserves of coin, as Lilith will rule hers. What an alliance that could be. And if she sat at the head of your group of academy friends, well, think how amenable you might be to any favor she might ask. I would never do her any favors, nor would I join this little cabal, Eben insisted. As I have said already, I know you would not, said Theron. I am angry at Lilith, not you. Think. She knows we three dislike her. We have confronted her in the past. And what does she think of to solve this problem? Division. Seducing the two of you while she leaves me out in the cold. You may overestimate our importance, mumbled Calem, eyes at his feet. I would be surprised to know that Lilith thinks much of us at all, let alone enough to concoct such a scheme as that. Neither of you has known her as long as I, said Theron darkly. Look, said Eben, pointing. Where is she going? Lilith had stood and begun to move away, but when Orin and Nella made to rise with her, she waved them down. I must use the privy, she said, and swept off, drawing her black cloak tight. Her steps were brisk and clipped, and she stopped only once to look back over her shoulder when she reached the library doors. Eben shared a look with his friends. The privy, she says? I doubt it, said Theron. Let us go. But do you not think... Oh, never mind, grumbled Calem, for they had started off without him. By the time they reached the hallway, Lilith had almost vanished, but they spied her just before she turned a corner. They hastened to follow down another 2 halls, but when Lilith reached the turn to the privies, she passed it by. Again, Eben, Calem, and Theron shared a silent look before running behind her. She reached one of the white cedar doors that led out, and then again glanced down the hallway in both directions. Eben and his friends were only saved because Lilith looked the other way first, for they dove into an alcove before she could turn back to see them. Once they heard the door swing shut, they ran after her again. The night air outside was wonderfully cold upon their cheeks, for inside the citadel Eben had begun to sweat beneath his cloak. Snow had yet to fall, and so they could keep their steps silent upon the soft grass as they followed Lilith deep into the Academy's training grounds. She took an odd path, weaving through bushes and hedges, first one way and then another. Has she seen us following her? Said Calem. I do not think so, for still she moves slowly, said Theron. She could be lost, but more likely she is taking precautions. But even as she spoke, Lilith turned the corner of a great hedge and broke into a run, her steps fading toward silence. Go, said Eben. They sprinted for the end of the hedge and came into the open. Lilith was nowhere to be seen. Split up, hissed Theron. She ran off. Theron, said Eben. He could follow her, but it would be a waste. He ran straight, and Calem scampered to stay at his heels. How do you know she went this way? Said Calem. I do not, growled Eben. I am hoping. The hedges formed into a sort of maze in this part of the garden, but they could see a fair distance in every direction. Eben thought he could hear running footsteps around every corner. Whenever he wondered if they were only in his mind, they came again, and Calem would seize the sleeve of his robe. Then they would run pell-mell to catch up, only to hear the steps fade and vanish again. Darkness take her, said Eben. She must know we are here. Oh, said Calem, gripping his arm. They went deathly still. Footsteps on the other side of the hedge continued for a moment before petering to nothing. Caleb met Eben's eyes in the moonlight. The boys were wide and frightened, but then Eben guessed that he must look much the same. They crept along, Eben's steps slow and soft as a field mouse. He heard one sharp step on the other side of the hedge. It sounded like a stumble. He looked at Caleb again and received a nod. Lilith was sneaking along beside them. Then they heard murmuring voices from the other direction. Eben whirled. Caleb barely stifled a cry. From the other side of the hedge came the sound of running. Lilith was trying to flee, taking advantage of the distraction. "Catch her," Eben whispered. "I think I can—" Caleb's eyes began to glow. He stepped towards the hedge and held forth his hands. When he touched the shrub, it hissed and vanished into steam. Leaping forwards, he cleared a tunnel through the plants, only for Eben to hear him give a muffled cry from the other side. "Caleb!" Eben barely kept his voice muted as he bounded forwards through the bush. On the other side were two dark figures. He flung himself at the taller one, tackling it to the ground. "Get off me, you idiot gold shitter!" hissed a familiar voice. Said Eben, for indeed it was her. He pushed up and away, holding out his hands. For indeed it was her. He pushed... Voice. "Theron?" said Eben, for indeed it was her. He pushed up and away, holding out his hands. I am sorry. I did not know—" "Leave it," she growled, "and help me up." He hastened to take Theron's hand and pull her to standing. "We heard you and thought it was Lilith." "I heard you and thought you were Lilith. When I heard those voices, I thought she was trying to escape." The voices. Eben waved at his friends for silence. Together they crept towards the gap in the hedges that Caleb had cleared. The voices were still there, two of them, both hushed. "That must be Lilith," whispered Caleb. "Yes, and one other," said Theron. "It is a good thing they did not hear us," said Eben. "Now if we can see who—" But there came rustling steps on the grass, and the trio threw themselves behind a rose bush. Lilith emerged from the garden into the moonlight. Her eyes were fixed straight ahead, and her steps were steady. Had she glanced to her left, she might have seen Eben, but she did not waver on her way back to the citadel. "After her," said Theron. "In a moment," said Eben. "First, I would like to know who she spoke to. Her accomplice means nothing. We are following Lilith. It will be but a moment." Eben did not wait for an answer, but slipped around the rosebush and into the hedges. Here the plants formed a sort of fence around a small yard with two stone benches. Eben had come here on occasion, when he wished to be alone with his thoughts. He reached a narrow gap in the hedge, pressing himself up against it to peer inside. He could see no one. Eben turned to find Theron and Caleb eyeing him expectantly. He frowned, shaking his head. Theron pushed past him to see for herself. "Theron, wait!" Eben grabbed for her sleeve, but she cast him off. Eben flinched as she stepped into the open. But nothing happened. Slowly he straightened and joined her. No one was there. The benches were empty. "Who was she talking to?" Caleb asked. "Who was she—" Benches were empty. "Who was she talking to?" Caleb asked. "They must have slipped away," muttered Theron. "Our eyes were upon the exit the whole time," said Eben. "They could not have left without us seeing it." Theron snorted. "This is the Academy, Eben. A weremage could have turned into a snake and slithered away. A mind mage could leap over the hedge. A fire mage—" A child's piercing scream rang out from the citadel, cutting her words short. Shock froze them. Then Eben cried, "Lilith!" and ran, while the others hastened to follow. Together they burst through the white cedar door and flew through the halls, towards the screams that grew louder and more terrified the closer they drew. "We make for the vaults," said Theron as they ran. "Something has happened. Lilith must—" They rounded the final corner and froze, struck dumb at the sight before them. In front of a great iron door lay Instructor Creedell. His eyes were no longer anxious and shifting, but vacant and staring up at the ceiling as blood spilled from his slit throat to pool around his body. Chapter 6. For a moment, Evan could see nothing but the body. Credel's face was elf white, marked only by the dark blood that had spattered his skin as it spurted forth. That blood ran thick and slow now, soaking into his hair and robes. Evan thought of the day the seat was attacked, and that Credel had been blood-stained then, too, fighting to defend his students from the shades in an uncommon display of courage. His students, Astrea. Darkness take me, thought Evan, for there she was, little Astrea, cowering against the wall. She was screaming, still screaming, and he realized it had been her voice they had heard from the garden. Her feet scraped the floor, and her hands dragged at the stone wall as though she wished to burrow into it and away, but she could not remove her eyes from Credel sprawled on the floor. Another student stood beside her, holding her in a tight embrace. Isra, the girl he had run into in the dining hall that morning. She held Astrea tight, her face held to the girl's, whispering comfort into her ear. Some other students stood about as well, drawn by the commotion just as Evan and his friends had been, but all, like Evan, were frozen in fear. He forced himself to move, crossing the hallway towards Astrea. He knelt before her, placing his face in between her and Credel's corpse. Astrea! Astrea! She stopped her screaming long enough for her wild eyes to find his. It took a moment for her to recognize him, but when she did, she flung herself forwards, wrapping her arms around his neck. He turned so her face was pointed away from Credel. But then, to his surprise, Isra reached out to drag Astrea backwards. She knelt to hold the girl as Evan had done. Her eyes were wide, her face even more gaunt and pinched than usual. Astrea gripped her hard, tears soaking the older girl's robes. "What happened?" said Theron. For a moment Isra seemed unable to speak, only looking up and blinking. At last she shook her head and stuttered. We were walking together. The two of us. We found him here. Like this." "Who else was here?" said Theron. "Was it Lilith? Did you see her?" Evan frowned. "Theron." Isra only blinked, still in shock, and her hands tightened on Astrea's shoulders. "What is going on here? Stand aside, all of... Oh, sky above. Back! Back!" They turned to find Instructor Gia. Her light skin had grown paler still, and she stood before the students, waving them back from the body. Instructor Dasco arrived a moment later. He stared at the body a bit longer than Gia had, but then he joined her in ushering the students away. "Sky above, Evan! Get that child out of sight of him!" Gia's sharp rebuke jarred him from his thoughts. Crimson blush crept into his cheeks that he had not thought of it. Quickly he went to Astrea, guiding her down the hallway. Isra kept a tight grip on the girl's shoulder, but she did not stop him. They halted around the corner as Astrea collapsed to the stone floor. Isra sat beside her, one arm still wrapped protectively about the girl's shoulders. Heavy thudding footsteps sounded down the hall, and Perrin came into view a moment later. She caught Evan's eye and tossed her head. "What is all this commotion for?" Evan pointed down the hall. "Instructor Credel, he is... They found him." Perrin's face grew solemn, and she broke into a heavy jog. Though she vanished around the corner, Evan could still hear the sharp hiss of her breath when she saw Credel. Then her booming commands rang forth, ordering students to draw away from the body so the instructors could do their work. "Are you all right?" Evan winced at once, hearing how foolish the question sounded. "Would you like some water? Or anything else from the kitchens? I could fetch something." But Astrea only shook her head, eyes fixed sightlessly upon her feet. Theron drew close and pulled Caleb in as well. "It was Lilith," she murmured. "Must have been. She slipped away from us so she could do this. I knew we should have followed her." "Murdering an instructor," said Caleb. "That is madness. She could not. And besides, why would she?" "The vaults, of course," said Theron, frowning. "Did you not see the door where Credel lay? That is the entrance." Caleb balked, sharing an uncertain look with Evan, but sharp, clipped footsteps down the hallway distracted them, and they all turned to see Gia approaching. She swept her gaze across them, lips pursed. Did anyone see what happened? No, Instructor, said Eben. Estrella shook her head. Who arrived first? Then, Estrella and Israel.
Hey, 66. That should be set up as a forwarding site. Although I think I just had somebody tell me that it's not working right now. It was getting to be too much to maintain that as my author site when the only thing that I really have to point people to is my books. So I just point it towards my book site now.
Estrella shook her head. Who arrived first? Then, Estrella and Israel, or at least they came before we did, said Theron. But, Instructor, in the garden we saw... Gia silenced her with a raised finger and then went to kneel before Estrella and Israel. She took the younger girl's hands in her own, pressing them gently together. Estrella, she said softly, it pains me greatly that you saw that. I am sorry to ask, but it may help us. Did you see anything? Anything at all that might help? Estrella shook her head, eyes still saucer-wide. Isra gripped her tighter. We were together, Instructor, walking through the hall. We found him just as you saw him. Is that true, Estrella? The girl nodded. Gia sighed and stood. Thank you both. Isra, please see Estrella to her dormitory, and wait with her in the common room until I can visit you. Do you understand? Isra nodded and stood. But before she could leave, Theron sprang forwards to take Gia's sleeve. Instructor, we may have seen something that could help. Moments before we heard Estrella scream, we were following Lilith in the gardens. She spoke with someone out there, though we could not see who. Then she eluded us, vanishing from sight. It was only moments later that they found Credel's body. Gia frowned. Why were you following her? What do you mean she eluded you? She snuck away. She stepped out of sight so that we could not follow her. Eben had grown more uncomfortable with Theron's every word, and now he took her by the arm. Theron, that is not exactly what happened. Instructor, we were following Lilith, but she did not know it, and she did not try to evade us. She went into the academy while we stayed behind. Theron's eyes upon him were full of fury and hurt. But it was before Credel was killed. And hurt. But it was before Credel was killed, she insisted. Gia glared, folding her arms across her chest. Theron, I know something of the feud between you and Lilith, but accusing her of murder is far beyond reason, even for you. Unless you have something more substantial than this. I have not accused her, cried Theron. I've only told you what I saw. Is it not at least worth questioning her? Little more than any other soul at the academy, said Gia. Many were surely alone when... Abruptly she stopped talking and drew up straight, folding her hands together before her. Eben felt a presence behind him and turned. There stood Dean Foradar, imposing in his robes of office, his dark eyes fixed on Eben. Son of Drayden, he said, his voice dripping with scorn. I am not surprised to find you present in such a commotion. Dean, said Gia gravely. Instructor Dean, said Gia gravely. Instructor Credel has been found dead. I will show you the body. Dasco and Perrin have cleared the students out of the hall. That gave Zane pause, but only for the space of a breath. Did any witness what happened? He said, never taking his gaze from Eben. Were you there, son of Drayden? Fear mixed with anger in Eben's breast. Fear of Zane's reckless malice and anger at the injustice of it. No, Dean. I was in the garden with Theron and Calum. Zane looked to Eben's friends. Theron nodded, and Calum said, It is true, Dean. Several other students reached the body before Eben and his friends, Dean, Gia added. We had just begun to question the students when you arrived. Zane looked from her to Isra, who met his gaze with one of equal steel. He shrugged and pushed past Eben, who was forced to step aside. Gia followed him around the corner. Eben had almost decided to go with them when he heard many footsteps coming down the hall from the opposite direction. In a moment, Lilith appeared. Behind her were the students she had gathered in the library. Lilith! Theron's voice rose to a furious shout. What have you done? The students stopped, and Lilith glared back. What are you talking about, Theron? We heard a tumult and came to see what it was. You lie. Theron stepped forwards. Evan gripped her arm, and Caleb took the other. We know what you did, Lilith. And what exactly is that? Zane's voice rolled through the hallway, freezing them like mind magic. The dean swept forwards, Gia at his side, and both came to a stop between the two groups. Gia spoke first. Lilith, can you account for your whereabouts this evening? Lilith blinked, brow furrowing with doubt. I was in the library with my friends. We saw you, cried Theron. We saw you in the garden, Lilith, and then you came back into the citadel, just before Credel was killed. Beneath her dark skin, Lilith went gray as ash. Killed? She swallowed, looking at the others beside her. I only stepped out to get some air, and then I went straight back to the others. They were there, and they know I am telling the truth. She is, said Orin immediately. But on Lilith's other side, Nella hesitated. It was only a moment before she nodded in assent, but Eben noted it. Very well, said Gia. Then we are done here. All of you return to your rooms. Eben, if you would, look in upon Estrella in her dormitory. I will be there as soon as I can, but I want to ensure she has friends about her. She is far too young to have witnessed something so wretched. I will, Instructor. Eben noted that Zane had fixed him with a dark look and did not seem pleased to see them go. But again he turned without speaking, and Eben hastened away before they could be recalled. The students with Lilith were silent. Theron gave them all dirty looks as they went, and once the hallway branched off, she dragged Eben and Caleb in another direction. Out of earshot, she pressed them both into an alcove. Lilith must have had something to do with this. I know it. Caleb frowned and looked down at his feet. I am not so certain. Theron opened her mouth, but Eben jumped in before she could speak. He is right, Theron. We cannot know anything for certain. We only lost sight of her for a moment. How could she have killed him and then returned to the library so quickly? It was not such a long distance, said Theron. I think that, after she lost us, she made for the vaults. But she came upon Credel, killed him, and then ran for the library as quickly as she could, before anyone could see what she had done. But why? Said Caleb. For what purpose? For no purpose, said Theron. He must have surprised her. Do you remember this morning, when he asked for my key to the vaults? Credel never enters the vaults, but some business must have called him there. Lilith did not expect that, and so when he saw her, he panicked. Eben looked down the hall, towards where Lilith and the others had vanished. He gritted his teeth and shook his head. I do not know, Theron. Lilith has been cruel to me since the day I arrived. But a murderer? Theron scowled. I do not think she is some vile killer who sits about plotting the slow, torturous deaths of others. But I know she is ruthless and ambitious, and tied closely to the dark dealings of her family. The Yerins may hold no candle to the family Drayden, yet it is known that they, too, will kill any who stand in their way. But Lilith is scarcely more than a girl, said Caleb. We all are. You mean you are, said Theron. She is on the cusp of her eighth. More than a girl, said Caleb. Said Caleb. We all are. You mean you are, said Theron. She is... You are, said Theron. She is on the cusp of her 18th year, more than old enough to act as an agent of her house. And indeed, I believe she may be. She might not have wished for Credel's death, but she had a hand in it nonetheless. If what you say is true, I am more fearful than before, said Caleb. I want to prove the guilt of those who had a hand in the attack. But if the Yerins will kill to protect the secret, might we not die ourselves? And our new dean is out for Eben's blood. If we try to investigate, we may land ourselves in even greater danger, or be expelled. And from outside the academy, we can do nothing. If we remain but do nothing, then what does it matter if we are expelled or not? Said Theron. Underrealm itself is in danger. Do you think we can attend our studies for the next few years and hope the war will pass us by? Calum fixed her with a hard look. I think it is easier for you to say that than for us. You have completed your studies, and everyone knows it. If you left now, you would be a full-fledged wizard, whether or not you had the Academy's blessing to practice. Evan and I have not that luxury. You ask us to risk all our learning, many years more of education, trying to prove guilt that may or may not exist. Theron had no answer for that, and looked uneasily away from them both. Do you feel the same, Evan? But Evan scarcely heard her. His thoughts were far away, upon the southern cliffs of the seat, where Cyrus's flesh had turned to stone under his hand. He felt as though he stood upon those cliffs again. He could step forwards, plunging himself into the abyss with no hope of return. If he joined Theron in her hunt for Lilith, he could be expelled, or die, or be forced to kill again. But if he stayed his hand, if he shut his eyes and feigned ignorance of the dark clouds swirling about the Academy, then others might perish. And if Evan did not kill them, still he would bear the guilt of it. Evan? Said Theron. I do not know. I do not know. I have no wish to be killed or expelled in a hunt for the truth. But neither do I wish to sit and do nothing, when it may lead to the deaths of others like Credell. I know not what to do. That is hardly helpful, said Theron, snorting. Choosing to do nothing is still a choice. I do not wish to do nothing, said Evan. Yet I fear to do anything. How can I explain it when I do not understand it myself? Evan, stop being a coward and leave off, Theron. He pushed her away and strode down the hallway without looking back, for he knew he would find her glaring at him in anger. Cyrus's face flashed before his eyes again, and then again, and the former dean's dry, crusted lips whispered the word, murderer. He shivered, hating himself for his indecision. Yet how could he ease his mind? To whom could he speak? The answer came in a flash. Only one person would understand. Only one soul could hear him freely. Adara.
Oh, thank God. That's what I was afraid of. Oops.
Chapter 7. It was far too late to consider leaving.
No. Oh my god, it's Kristen. How's it going? You caught me right in the middle of a stretch. Which is why I sounded like I was squeezing one out as I said that. Oh, audiobooks exist. Dublistrem. Tell me you fucking... Why? Oh, well, enjoy dinner and D&D. I will enjoy trying to beat an audiobook. I will enjoy trying to beat an audiobook out of my computer. With excessive force. Giggity. Oh, is that what I did? Come on. Come on, you're gonna work. You're gonna work. That's fucking teamwork. Yes, it is, Seth. That is exactly what's going on. And I wish it would just fix instead of being a pain in the ass. Oh, it's going fantastic. Hey, it worked. Hallelujah. 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 Actually, let's just listen to this real quick.
Chapter 7. It was far too late to consider leaving the academy to see her, and the instructors were all on high alert after Credel's murder.
Boom. Okay, we got an easy fix now. We got an easy fix. It's all gonna be fine. It's all gonna be fine.
Chapter 8.
Chapter 8. As Eben finds his way out of the academy and into dangerous territory controlled by an evil merchant. Climbing in the back of a merchant caravan and hitchhiking his way across the 9 kingdoms. before being discovered by the wizard Zane. Chapter 1. Lauren let her axe fall, and the log split with the sound of a skull cracking open. She heaved a sigh and hoisted the axe to her shoulder. One hand rose to wipe sweat from her filthy brow, streaking it with dirt. She surveyed the pile of logs that awaited the kiss of her axe. There were many. Oh, hold on, the program. Every once in a while you hit the phrasing just right, and it's really magical.
Chapter 10. Chapter 11. Chapter 12. Chapter 13. Chapter 14. Chapter 15.
Far too many, if she had any hope of going to the village dance that night. Lauren did not care overmuch for dances, but certainly she preferred them to chopping logs. I'm going to go out and I'm going to chip some logs. Thanks, Kristen. Great to see you. Come by some other time. It'll be great. I'm going to go chirp some logs for the fair. You know, when I'm getting a little bit stressed out by life, there's one surefire way to take my mind off my troubles. Chirping lurks. How to hardy.
Chapter 11. Chapter 12. Chapter 13. Chapter 14.
Chapter 13.
Chapter 15.
Chapter 15. Please save all of my files and then close the program. It's good times in the Discord server. Good times. All right, later, Seth. Sorry I missed. Missed you saying goodbye.
Chapter 16. Chapter 17. Chapter 18. Chapter 19. Forward. Chapter 20. Chapter 21.
Hey Google, stop. All right, I gotta finish this.
The rest of their... Chapter 21.
Okay. Bada bing, bada boom, ba bam. 16 through 21 uploaded. Oh shit, forward. The forward. Okay, I have to make sure to do the forward. Hold on, I can just wait for this to upload. Can I? Can I wait for this to upload? Come on, can you just finish uploading? I need to go. That feeling when the internet is not going fast enough. I mean, it's going fast. I don't want to seem like I'm complaining. Almost there. Come on. Hey, Erica's back. All right. And upload the last file here. Hurry up. Hurry up. Hurry up. Grr. Arg. Close all. Yes to all. Eh. Eh. Come on. Okay, and forward. Excellent. Okay, and that is my cue. I have to go pick up the kids. Oh, good to be back in streaming, I gotta say. I like it a lot. And I will be back tomorrow. I'll be streaming from the other computer as I write in the morning and then doing more audiobook work in the afternoon and evening. Thanks so much to everybody who came and hung out today. I will see you all another time. Hope you have a great day. Bye.